right, that those members who want to pursue for PhD, right, there is a 7-day intensive workshop going on. And today we were having Dr. Preeti Oza ma'am from Andrew University in Mumbai. So she took it so long and we tried to interrupt her, but because of some reason we couldn't, and there are so many questions. And secondly, ma'am, when you saw in the starting, when you saw the video, small video, that is our ICI motto song. Generally, we start any program when we start, we always start with that ICI motto song. Okay. So on behalf of Ahmedabad branch of WRC of ICI and Vikasa, ma'am, we welcome you and thank you. You accepted our invitation to join this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, ma'am. Now, friends, before we start with this particular session, I would request that thank you all for joining this. And on this Sunday, also, we are having one very important session again in this series of Paramarsh to come. Now, friends, why today's session is very, very important. Then normally, friends, we as a chartered accountant students, when we do our articleship training under our employer, mainly our role is in preparation of the financial statement. And in preparation of financial statement is a bit an easy task because we are in the field of accountancy and we ourselves many times prepare the accounts. And it's our mindset. But when it comes to interpreting and reading the financial statements, it's a bit a step 2, which comes after the preparation. Because in preparation, we need to apply our mindset. Whereas in reading and that too, furthermore, interpreting, we need to apply our mindset, and we'll also need to look at by which perspective the other person who has prepared the financial statement has prepared. And while reading and interpreting, we need to do so many in-line reading, or you can say we need to go beyond the words and beyond the figures to know that. And once you can very clearly interpret, you can forecast even on the future to come. So in order to make us in brief understand, in order to make us learn that which skills are needed, why this perspective is important, we have a very learned faculty, Hetal Javeri ma'am. So ma'am, again, I thank you to accept our invitation. And I request Divya. Thank you, ma'am. And I request Divya to take the session ahead.
Thank you so much, sir. Our today's session is how to read and interpret financial statements. And we are so blessed to have Hetal ma'am with us. I would also like to introduce our today's faculty. Hetal Javeri ma'am is a faculty of Amrut Modi School of Management with over 26 years of industry and academic experience. She has done her doctoral research in retail banking innovations. She attended executive program at the Judge Business School, University of Cambridge, UK. Her post-graduation is in commerce with a specialization in management. She holds diploma in business finance from ICFAI. She has more than 6 years of corporate experience in the fields of project finance, equity research, and leasing and hire purchase. She is a full-time academician for more than 20 years. Hetal ma'am's research work is primarily in the area of banking, entrepreneurial finance, mergers and acquisition are her key research interest areas. She has presented various research papers in national and international conferences and has published material in the form of chapter in book on entrepreneurship. She is on the editorial board and is associated as a reviewer with national and international journals. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking the session in our Paramarsh series.
It's my pleasure. And thank you for a nice introduction. Shall I start?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Am I audible properly?
Yes, ma'am. Properly audible.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fenil, and thank you, Divya. And thank you, the entire ICI Ahmedabad Wing team for this is very interesting initiative taken by the Ahmedabad chapter, Paramarsh, and I'm happy that students are taking advantage of that. Let me start directly without wasting much of a time because, before I start, just a minute. Divya, what is the time that by which I should end? How much time do I have on my hand?
You can take your time.
So is it okay that I end by 9:50? Taking 1 hour?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that fine with the students also?
Yes, ma'am, definitely. We would love to learn.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. So as I understand, with my interaction with few of the other members in the ICI chapter, Ahmedabad chapter, that all of you are pursuing your CA and maybe at different stages of your CA. So with that understanding, I have taken up my content for the discussion today. And though I have done my bachelor's and master's in commerce, accounting is what I have studied. But accounting now, after these many years, is not my foray. Okay, my foray is primarily finance. So normally we say that the role of financial manager starts after the role of accountant gets over. And with that orientation, I've taken up this particular topic of reading and interpreting financial statements. Very rightly said by Mr. Fennell also that preparation is one side and reading and interpretation is the other side of the story. And that's what I've tried to keep in focus. So let me start with a brief overview here. Can you all see my slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So I'll be focusing, as I say, that more from the financial perspective. Before we move on to exactly reading and interpreting financial statements, the question arises that why do we need to do this? Okay, what do we learn by reading and interpreting financial statements and why do we need to do that? Secondly, as Mr. Fennell also mentioned, that from whose perspective are we going to do this? Okay, so that is also very important. So let me start with a brief background on that why do we need to interpret financial statements? Read and interpret financial statements. And when we say reading financial statement, it doesn't mean that what is printed in black and white is what we need, in black is what we need to read, but rather we need to understand, to read between the lines. Okay, and that's where a sixth sense and learning, and knowledge comes into picture. So why do we need to do that? Is primarily to interpret the business, what the business is, to understand where the business is going, which is very important because past is something which has already happened. What is important for us is what is going to come. Okay, in whatever capacity, in whatever role that we are, either as a lender or employee or as an equity investor, whatever. So past has already happened, it cannot be changed, it cannot be undone. So why are we studying the financial statements is to understand what is likely to come in the near future. So we learn to assess the results, okay, which are largely been prepared by accountants like you, the future accountants, to assess the capital structure, that what is the composition of debt and equity and what is the who are the capital suppliers. So that's what we try to understand through financial statements also. And as I said, understanding the past is prerequisite for anticipating the future. Okay, so without understanding the past, we cannot make judgment about the future. And largely from the investor's perspective, to value the business, because all of us need to understand that what is the hidden jewel in a business, and is it the right time to make investment or is it the right time to get out of the investment? Okay, and that's why we need to value the business. So what do these financial statements communicate? The financial statements largely communicate four important things. One, about the financial health of a business for a given period of time and at a given point of time. As you know that P&L statement is prepared, which represents the data about the entire period. What is the revenue generated? What are the expenses incurred throughout the period? Normally period, we mean a year. Okay. And at a given point of time, that's what the balance sheet tells us, that what is the current position of the company as of the day when the balance sheet is prepared. So that's one. Second, it communicates the financial performance of the company. Third Third, the current condition of the company. And fourthly, the cash flows. And cash flows is something which at times is ignored or is not being taken care of, maybe many a times by many of the entities. But cash flows are also very important financial statements. Okay. Okay. At any point of time, if you have any question, please feel free to ask the question. Divya, what is this? What is the pattern that we follow? Do they write in the chat box or do they unmute themselves and ask the question? How is it? Okay, I don't know. If any one of you can unmute yourself. I'm not sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yes,
Yes, Jay this side. I am
yeah.
managing committee member of Visasa. So we would suggest the participants to take questions at last. They could also write in chat box and you can answer it one by one.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So, for whom are we interpreting, reading and interpreting, or who is required to do that? Anyone who has direct or indirect connection with the company, they can do that, or for those entities, this can be done. But primarily, four important categories of entities from whose perspective normally the financial statements are being read and interpreted. One, from the trade creditor's perspective, because they sell goods on credit to a party. And when they sell goods on credit, what they want to ensure is that whether they'll get their payment on time or not. And that's why they would like to look at, how has been the financial position of the company. So that's one set of investors. Second is suppliers of long-term credit. Okay, long-term debt or the loans given by normally banks or other financial institutions, or debenture suppliers, debenture holders. They would also like to know what is the financial position and what is most likely in the coming period based on that. Any kind of investors who invest in equity, preference is rare, but yes, maybe. So they also would like to know when to enter, when to exit. And obviously, very important entity is the management. Because that they are running the business, they are doing the business, they would like to know what is happening with the business. I hope I'm clear. If you have anything, do write in the chat box. So, which are the key sources of financial information for us? And all of you have studied this and not getting into this. All of you know the financial statements better than I know. Okay, because you are on the parties who are involved some way in terms of preparation of financial statements. So you know what is written where. So I'm not going to get into how, in what order the items are presented in balance sheet or P&L or cash flows, or what are the notes to the accounts. Okay, but primarily the balance sheet is a statement which gives us the answers as what the company owes to whom and what the company owns. Owns are nothing else but the assets and owes are nothing else but the liabilities. And when you look at the profitability statement, what we are trying to understand from the profitability statement is that how have been the performance of the company over the given period in terms of the revenues and in terms of the expenditure. And the cash flows gives us a real picture about the cash inflows and the outflows only related to the cash, not related to the accounting profit. And you know that accounting profit and the cash profit or the cash inflows and outflows, they are different than your revenues and expenditure. Okay, so we look at the cash flow statements, and the fourth, where a lot of information is given about the accounting policies and practices of the companies following some accounting standards, is that the notes to the accounts. So these are the four key sources of financial information for any entity, be it management, be it creditor, or any other entity. So let's move on. So what is a balance sheet? A balance sheet is a statement, as I said, that about what the company owes and what the company owns. And on the liability side, the major source of liability, one of the important, not major, but one of the important sources of liability for a company is the owner's equity. And owner's equity normally include the paid up equity and preference capital as well as reserves and surplus and the other liabilities. Now, the size of these two boxes does not mean that this size always remain equal. Okay, for some companies, the owner's capital can be lesser. For some companies, owner's equity can be even more, or maybe the only source of funds for a company, right? But I have presented here that these are all possible. And these are the sources of funds for a company, whereas where the funds are invested is largely on the asset side of the balance sheet. And these assets can be long-term, can be short-term, whatever. Moving ahead to the profitability statement. When we look at the profitability statement or the income statement as it is known, the larger part occurs in terms of the expenses because that's what the company ends up spending. And the company tries to earn by selling of the products and services, and that's what the revenues are generated. And the difference between it's positive, the expenses are lesser than the revenues, we call it as a profit, else we call it as loss, if the revenues are lesser than the expenses. And the third statement, the cash flow statement. And the cash flow statement presents three types of cash flows: the operating cash flows, investing cash flows, and financing cash flows. The operating cash flows occur primarily from the operations of the business. So all the cash expenses, cash going out of the business because of the operations, and the cash coming in terms of the primarily in terms of the revenue. The investing side, what the company has invested funds into. So largely in terms of the capital expenditure. So where the company is investing, what new machines that the company has bought, what new asset that the company has bought, all this comes as part of the largely as cash outflows. And in case if the company has sold some old asset or reduced the working capital investment, then your investment goes down, that cash inflow happens. And the third thing, the financing side, or the third component of the cash flow is the financing cash flow. That's largely arising in terms of how the company has financed the resources. So it relates to the interest that is going out of the business, dividend payment being done to the preference shareholders, or dividend payment that is done to the equity shareholders. All that relates to the cash going out of the business. So these three types of cash flows, operating, investing, and financing, tell us the net change in the cash balance of the business. Okay, so it can be positive, it can be negative. For most growing company, for most of the companies, we understand that the net change in the cash balance is positive, that the inflows are more than the outflows. But for a startup, the net cash balance can be, the change can be negative. Their outflows are more than the investment. That is all possibility. But for an established company, normally the cash inflows are more than the outflows. So how the triangulation happen? The three key statements, as I said, income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. Though these are three independent statements, but as you know very well, they are actually not independent statements. These three statements are interconnected. One change in one of these statements will have impact on the other statement, either directly or indirectly. So any change in, say, maybe the expenses going up, the income statement definitely gets affected. The expenses going up, that means the profit going down. If everything else remaining constant, revenue remaining constant, expenses going up, profit goes down. And that means the profit that the company is taking to the balance sheet, that goes down, right? In the form of reserves and surplus. And the same way, the cash flow will also get affected. If these expenses are cash expenses, the cash outflow will increase and it will have an impact on the cash flow statement. So though there are three different statements, they cannot be talked about in isolation. These three statements are very well connected, and one change in one statement will have an impact on the another statement. One way I've told you that in terms of the profit, in terms of expense going up, profit going down, and so on and so forth. Another way that these statements are connected, primarily the income statement with the depreciation and the balance sheet, is through the depreciation charges. So when you increase the depreciation charge or change the accounting pattern, the depreciation charging method, the income statement gets affected because of that. And the impact is seen in the balance sheet in terms of the net block. Okay, so that's how these two statements, another way that are connected. These are few things that I'm saying that's how this interconnection is there between these three statements. Profit and loss I've already mentioned about. And then the question arises that what is the connection between balance sheet and the cash flow statement? The connection between the balance sheet and the cash flow statement arises in terms of operating cash flow, investing cash flows, and financing cash flows. How the profit has an impact, expense going up will have an impact on the profit, will have an impact on the balance sheet, and this gets reflected in the cash flow. So from income statement to cash flow or balance sheet to cash flow. Investing cash flow, if the company invests more in the new assets, the asset base goes up in the balance sheet, okay, and the cash outflow increases, that's reflected in the cash flow statement. If the company sells off large number of assets, the balance sheet will have a will show lower amount of assets, and the cash inflow will increase from the sale of the assets. Right? And same with the financing effects, when the company pays dividend, interest, okay. So when the dividend is paid, obviously the amount taken to the balance sheet in terms of reserves and surplus goes down to the extent of the dividend payment, and it is reflected in the cash flow statement as a cash outflow on account of dividends. Right? So these three statements, though they are independent statements, they are three different statements, but they are not independent statements. They are dependent. One change in one can affect the other statement. So the question then arises that, shall we look at the financial statements in isolation? No, we shall not be looking at the financial statements in isolation. We shall be looking at always the connection between these three, or interconnection between these three. And then only we'll be able to understand the financial statements better. Okay, I hope I'm making sense. You are able to understand what I am talking about? Okay. So, okay. I'll try to, somebody has given a suggestion that, can you please help us, can you please show us the real life example by showing the balance sheet of Reliance or something? I'll try to do that. Okay. But let me first build a base, because without talking about that, I'll not be able to give you the understanding how these statements are connected or how to interpret these statements. Okay. And within the available time, I'm not very sure how it can be done. Let me try it out. Okay. So let's move on. The triangulation. I've explained. Okay. So now the question arises over here that when we look at these financial statements, how do we compare the financial statements of the same company probably over the time, or one company vis-a-vis the other company? Or if I want to say, somebody mentioned about Reliance Industries. So now everybody says that Reliance is the largest company in India, or maybe one of the largest companies globally. So I want to compare the financial performance of, say, for example, Reliance vis-a-vis maybe another petroleum company. Reliance is into petrochemicals, petroleum, and variety of different businesses. But say for just for the petroleum or the refinery part, I want to compare the performance of Reliance Industries Limited with another refinery. And that another second largest refinery, or maybe the next two, or one of the bigger than the Reliance Industries, is a company which is located in the US. And the financial statement of that company is presented in dollars. Now, comparing a balance sheet and a P&L statement of a company in INR and the other represented in US dollar turns out to be difficult. Okay. And if somebody may say that you may convert that at the prevailing exchange rate, but then the question arises, why do I convert at the prevailing exchange rate? Because maybe the prevailing exchange rates are lower or might be higher than what they were throughout the year. Now, if I convert them as of now at the current conversion rate, I might be doing injustice to the sales revenue that was generated at the beginning of the year. Okay, so comparing across different currencies is difficult. Comparing same company's performance over the years is also difficult because say 5 years back, the revenue was 1,000 rupees and today the revenue is 1 crore rupees or maybe 1 lakh rupees. And accordingly, all the numbers have changed. Now, if I look at the absolute numbers, again, it turns out to be difficult for me to gauge an idea that what has happened to the company, whether it is good or not. And when I compare the size of the company, okay, so maybe Infosys or TCS as one of the leading IT firms vis-a-vis a very small IT firm which just got listed on the exchange probably. How do I compare their performance? It's all difficult. Okay, so what is the way out then? The way out is only through the financial ratios. Why? Because financial ratios represent the numbers in relative terms. So rather than 1,000 rupees of sales and 1 lakh rupees of sales revenue, looking at that in absolute numbers, I look at the numbers in relative manners. Or rather than 1 crore INR as a revenue to maybe $10,000 US dollars as a revenue, no matter what exchange rate, I need not worry about when I look at the numbers in relative terms. Okay, and that's why financial ratios have a special position or a special importance. Why? Because we can compare them across time for the same company over the years, across companies, and against, we can also compare them against some benchmark. Against some benchmark, maybe the industry average. Okay, so a newly started IT company, the performance can be compared with the average of the industry. Okay, and what is the average of the industry? Why average of the industry? Because the industry consists of number of players which are small and big, good and not so good, or excellent, or the outstanding performers and the very poor performers. That's all been averaged out. Okay, and that's why we can also compare the ratios against some benchmark. And that's why financial ratios, they are the best solutions whenever there is this kind of questions that we have when you want to do any kind of comparison. Okay. So we'll be focusing on financial ratios. I've built a base of what are the financial statements, why financial statements we need to read and interpret, and then how can we do that rather than the absolute numbers. Better that we look at them in relative terms. That gives us a better idea. Secondly, the financial ratios, since they are not looking at the numbers in isolation or in absolute manner, the financial ratios, many of the financial ratios, also try to establish connection between more than one financial statement. So maybe a numerator is from one financial statement, the denominator value comes from the another financial statement. And that's how we see the connection between these two financial statements also. Okay. So now I'll be talking about few selected financial ratios which are important to be understood for any entity, be it creditor, be it investor, equity investor, be it debt supplier, be it management. And if you look at the list of ratios in many of your books, there are hundreds of ratios. And at times we get confused. Which one shall we pay attention to? Which one shall we calculate? Okay. And that is really difficult. That's really challenging. And if we calculate all of them, say hundreds of them, then how to put them all together and get a concise idea of the financial performance of a company? Because reading 100 numbers and interpreting 100 numbers, establishing connection between these 100 numbers is going to be a mess. Okay. So what I thought about that, let me focus on some of the key ratios only so that we can make out at least these ratios, if we pay attention to, we get a larger part of the understanding of these statements and we can interpret these statements well. Okay. So they are known as financial KPIs, key performance indicators. Okay. And they give us the key inputs about the performance of the company. And these financial ratios, we can group into 5 different categories. Now, again, I've taken these 5 categories here. There can be many more categories also, like valuation. Okay. Or there can be number of other ratios also. But I have picked up over here these 5 different categories. Utsavi, I'm not able to understand what you mean by compulsory measure in ratio. If you can be a little more elaborative or be specific in your question, I'll be able to understand that. Okay. So this is with reference to one of the questions raised in chat box. Okay. So I'll handle along with, as soon as I receive something in the chat box, I'll try to respond to that because that's where I'm discussing that point and somebody has a question about it. So I'll try to handle along with my session discussion also. Okay. So financial KPIs I've divided into these 5 categories. That's what I'm going to address to. The profitability ratios, accounting ratio, returns, efficiency ratios, financial leverage, and liquidity ratios. Okay. And in different books, different materials, you may find, some more number of groupings or some lesser number of groupings. But this is the way that I have divided them into. So let's start with the profit. And in each category, I'm going to address or talk about only a few of the ratios, which are key ratios. Okay, and that's why I've mentioned here KPIs are the key performance indicators. Okay. So let me start with the first one, financial KPIs. Profit margins. So all of you know the financial statements, the P&L statement very well, what items comes where, and how the numbers are being presented, right? I've tried to group them into some of the major heads for your understanding. And I've mentioned that at what stage, what ratio can be calculated and how it can be helpful. But the common term that we use is the margins, profit margins. What does this margin stand for? Anyone has any idea? If you can unmute yourself and respond to that, or you can write in the chat box, what do you mean by margins? And it's a very common term that we use. Right? I just want the session to be a little more interactive rather than me speaking only on one side and don't know what is happening on the other side. I would want you also to contribute. Okay. So any idea, anyone, that what does this margin mean? We talked many times about with reference to traders, or maybe simple example of vegetable vendors. we always say that they have high margins. Okay, they buy at a lower price and they sell at a higher price, and the difference is what is the profit. Okay. Yes, people says that it's a share of profit, my profit in product trading. Yes, or Jay says difference. Okay. Let me put it a little more specifically. When we talk about margin, we mean is a relative term. Margin as in terms of comparison with reference to revenue as denominator. Any kind of margin that we talk about, we always use the denominator as revenue. And that's what we call as margin. Okay. So when I talk about gross profit margin, right, what is the formula? Gross profit divided by the revenue. Okay. When I talk about net profit margin, net profit divided by the revenue. So always whenever there is a denominator is revenue, that with reference to my total income that I've received from the business, compared to that, how much the numerator value that I've found or I've earned, that's what we call as margin. Okay. So always keep in mind that margin, whenever we are talking about, we mean revenue is the denominator. Okay. So this is a typical order in which you present the items in the P&L statement. As I said that I've grouped them rather than keeping many heads, I've just grouped them. So from revenue, you deduct the variable cost of goods sold or variable cost and you arrive at the profit, a contribution profit. So what is the margin that we can calculate here? When I arrive at the profit, contribution profit, we calculate the contribution margin. The contribution margin is nothing else but the contribution profit divided by the revenue. As I said, margins mean revenue comes in the denominator. Okay. From that contribution profit, I deduct the cost of goods sold and arrive at the gross profit. Okay. It should be the fixed cost. Sorry. It's a typing error. Fixed cost. So from that, I arrive at the gross profit. And how do I calculate the gross profit margin? It's gross profit by revenue. From that, I deduct the selling, administrative, and other expenditure, which we consider as a non-operative expenditure. Okay. And arrive at the operating margin. Okay. Which are all the operating expenses? That is the variable cost, fixed cost, and selling and administrative expenses. All are related to the operations, and that's why we arrive at the operating profit. And the operating margin is operating profit by revenue. And then we deduct the non-operating expenses like interest expense. Interest is not an operating expense because it's a financial cost. It's not a cost arising out of the operations of the business. It's a cost related to the financing side. You have borrowed money from somebody and you're supposed to pay interest, and that's why it is not related to the operating profit. That comes after that. So you deduct the operating profit, you arrive at the taxable income. From that, you deduct the taxes and you arrive at the profit after tax. And when you arrive at the profit after tax, what you get is a net profit. And that's what we call as net profit margin, net profit by revenue. So whether it is contribution margin or gross profit margin, operating margin or net profit margin, the denominator is always the revenue. Right? Okay. Now, the question arises that how do we look at these numbers and whether a company with high gross profit margin is good or a company with high net profit margin is considered to be good? How do we, even within the 4 ratios, also how do we look at it? Another question arises that how do we look at the cash profit? Okay, because accounting profit and cash profit, these are 2 different numbers. Because depreciation and amortization, they are non-cash expenses. We take care of them, we present them in the P&L statement, but you know that actually there is no cash going out of the business. So when I'm talking about cash profit, obviously I'll not be considering all these numbers which are non-cash expenses. Okay, So let's look at how to read or how to compare these different margins also. So a company with high contribution margin and high gross margins, they have high growth potentials or high profit potentials. Because for most manufacturing company, the major cost comes from in the form of variable cost and the fixed cost. Now, if the component of the variable cost and the fixed cost is lower, that means for every additional unit that they sell, their cost is not going to increase to a larger extent as far as variable cost is concerned. Fixed anyway remains fixed. So per unit cost goes down for them. And that's why the profit margin increases as the sales increases. I was reading in a report sometime back, Zoom has 92% as a gross profit margin. 92% is a gross profit margin for Zoom. Can you imagine? 92% gross profit margin. That means when a new customer is added, only 8 rupees worth of or 8% worth of variable cost is added to the company. Rest 92 is considered as a gross profit for the company. Now look at the growth potential for such companies. Because every additional customer just cost 8 rupees to the company. I mean, that's in US dollars. So $8 out of $100. Right? Now, such companies have high growth potential. Operating profit margin. So it talks about the overall business profitability. And when a company has high selling administrative expenses, then obviously the profit margin, operating profit margin goes down. Okay, compared to the gross profit margin. So a company which has, say for example, in case of Zoom, if the say for example, companies like Zoom, when they add the variable cost is only $8 or 8 rupees for us to understand. Assume that the company has to spend a lot of money in terms of marketing, promotion, selling, and administrative cost. Assume that. Okay. So what will happen? 92% of gross profit margin may come down to maybe 72% as the operating profit margin because 20 rupees that the company has to spend on selling administrative cost. Okay. So for such companies, this may go down, but still the growth is better for a company. So when a company is a growing company, okay, as the sales increases for Zoom, now still is in a growth phase because, it picked up primarily post-COVID, okay, that every one of us started using such platforms like Zoom, and over here I'm talking about Zoom as such. So once they grow to a higher extent, their per unit selling price will come down. And that's why initially they may sound to be having high selling administrative cost, but over the period that will per unit basis that will come down. Okay, because it will be established by then. The third, net profit margin, everybody knows what is it. Okay, so primarily it is the profit available to the equity shareholders. And if a company has high borrowings or higher rate of interest and ends up paying higher amount of interest, then the net profit may go down, right? And the companies which are debt-free companies, okay, zero debt companies, their operating profit margin and net profit margin would remain more or less same, right? What I was talking about was the cash profit. So how do we present cash profit, or how do we get to know about cash profit of a company? The cash profit is also known as EBITDA, EBITDA. EBIT is earning before interest and taxes, T stands for depreciation, and A stands for amortization. So any such kind of write-off, which is amortized. So that's what represents EBITDA, give us the cash profit, because all the before the depreciation and amortization, which are non-cash expenses, And before the interest, because it's not an operating cost. And taxes, again, they're legal. That is not because of that. So that's not something which is in the hands of the company. So EBITDA is taken into consideration for arriving at the cash profit and then divided by again the revenue that gives us the EBITDA margin. But any of these ratios, higher they are, better they are for the company, or they represent that the company is a good company. Okay. And always these margins are represented in percentage terms. Right? So 100 rupees of profit on 1,000 rupees of sales, 10% is the profit margin. Right? Or 20 rupees of gross profit on 1,000 rupees of sales, 20% is the gross profit margin. Right? Okay. I see something in the chat box. Divya, I am ready to take practical example, but the only thing is that if I don't explain them the basic concepts, then how can I move on to that? And if you're sure that they know all these ratios well, I can directly jump into a practical experience example, whatever that you suggest. I'm open. If you feel that, all these financial ratios theoretically and how to read, how to interpret these ratios, if they're comfortable with, I can move on to a company. But, I was instructed to focus more on the fundamentals, and that's how accordingly I've prepared my presentation. You can unmute yourself and please let me know how should I go about it. Okay.
Participants are requested to kindly unmute yourself and please reply to this.
Yes, if you can tell me, if you all are comfortable with the fundamentals, these were the 4 ratios that I wanted to talk about, the profitability margin. There are 2 more ratios for the efficiency, 2 for leverage, 2 for so on and so forth. Okay. So there are not so many ratios that I've taken. But if you're comfortable with all these ratios and you know how to read, how to interpret these ratios, I can move on. But I've been instructed to focus more on the fundamentals. That's how, as I say that, I've prepared the presentation for. Okay. So a few students here in the chat box, they're writing that, please explain the fundamentals first. Few are writing, ma'am, practical example. Divya, you suggest me. I'm not sure what to do.
Hi, ma'am.
Yes, Jay.
Ma'am, can we take practical examples along with the fundamentals? Like if you explain a ratio, we can take a practical example regarding that ratio. Or if we can do that sort of thing.
Okay, I'll do that. Meanwhile, I proceed further. Let me open one financial statement. Okay, and I'll show that parallelly. Right? Okay. So till it opens, let me move ahead. Just a minute. Okay. So this is opening parallelly. And meanwhile, let me go ahead. So the second category of the ratios that I've picked up, as I said, the accounting returns. And by accounting returns, we mean that looking to the books of accounts, not going financially in terms, but how much the return is generated per rupee of capital. Okay. And primarily 2 important ratios are here, which makes, which a financial analyst or an investor must look at. And these 2 are, one is return on equity, that how much equity income is earned on the capital that is invested, equity capital that is invested. And this is largely important for the equity capital suppliers. Whereas when we are looking at all capital suppliers, that is equity as well as debt suppliers altogether, what matters is not only the ROE, but what matters is ROA, return on assets or return on capital. And since we are looking at all investors, we must ensure that there is consistency principle that is being followed here. That is, when we are looking at all equity suppliers only, then we take into consideration the numerator as the equity income. But when we are looking at all asset, that means all capital suppliers, then we look at the interest, the income to the company before interest and taxes minus taxes, because interest is the capital cost. That's what we need not take into consideration. So operating income or the EBIT into 1 minus T, that's what we take into consideration as numerator. Since this is ROE is for equity investors, we take the denominator as equity capital. Over here, we are looking from all capital suppliers perspective. So the denominator comes as equity plus debt. But we normally deduct, please keep this in mind, we normally deduct cash and marketable securities. And why do we deduct cash and marketable securities? Because it's not the amount that is invested in the business. The cash remains idle and marketable securities are not invested in the business, that's in somebody else's business been invested. And that's why while calculating ROA, the denominator is taken as all capital minus cash and marketable securities. So we must ensure consistency when we're looking at the equity. Then take numerator also relevant to the equity suppliers and denominator also as equity suppliers. Same way in case of ROA, all capital suppliers perspective. Again, higher accounting returns are better for the business. And normally, these accounting returns are presented in percentage terms. Okay. So, So this is the accounting returns that I was talking about. Okay. Let me open. This is the let me share this new file. Can you see the annual report here on this screen? This is the annual report of Pidilite Industries. Okay. Okay. So a very interesting way of presentation. Whenever you get time, please refer to this company's website. Very interesting way of presentation of their annual reports here. What I've opened, there are two versions of annual report available on Pidilite website. One is an interactive annual report and one is a regular annual report. I've opened the interactive version, which is more, you can connect easily with it. And let me move to the page where the profitability statement is presented. Okay. And the consolidated profit and loss statement is on page number 101. Okay, let me open this here. 103, sorry. Yeah. You can see here the profit and loss statement on this side of the page. Okay. And let me zoom this. Can you see this here? Okay. So let's look at the numbers here. Can you please calculate the net profit margin for the company? You have these figures for 2020s available on the screen. I can zoom this further. Can you see the numbers here? Okay. So the revenue from operations you can see here, right? And there is 151 of 151 crore rupees of the other income, and that's how it makes up 6484 as the total income. And look at the profit amount here. Profit for the year is 1101. Can you all calculate the profit, net profit margin for the company? $6,484. $0.45 is the revenue. What will be the calculation? What will be the numerator? Can you please tell me the numerator? Any one of you can unmute yourself. What will come in the numerator? Okay, I see a few responses here in the chat box. Okay, so 16.98%. Is everyone getting 16.98% as the net profit margin? Okay, okay. So the numerator is 1101 and the denominator is 6484. Okay, so that's one. Other that we talked about is the profit before, gross profit. And the third thing that we looked at was the operating profit margin. And before that, we looked at the contribution profit margin. Okay, so for calculating the contribution profit margin, we need data about the variable cost. And probably, as far as I understand, that this data is the contribution as far as concerned, is that data is not available from the P&L statement. Because the P&L statement represents all the variable cost as well as the fixed cost altogether. And that's why you need to go to refer to the notes to the accounts and find out that information. Divya, do we have time to go to the those details, or shall I move on with the next ratio?
Yes, ma'am, we have time.
Okay. So let's look at then. Now, if you look at here, profit before, the another ratio that we calculated, I'll pick up one ratio from each statement so that I can handle. Yeah, that will be better. Okay, okay. What if I take one ratio from each category? Simran, it was not 6848, it was 6484. The denominator. Okay. So let me pick up another ratio from another statement. The return ratio, ROE, that we calculated. Okay. ROE, what is the numerator? Equity earnings. Okay. And what would be the denominator? Equity capital. Can you please calculate here? Let me share this. So this is the P&L statement, balance sheet of the company Pidilite. And if on the asset side, if you look at, on the liability side, if you look at the equity paid up capital, the total equity amounts to 4464.82, right? That's the amount that is shown here. And what are the equity earnings? The profit after tax is the equity earnings, because there is no preference capital as shown here. There is no preference capital. Okay. So all the profit after tax is same as the available earnings to the equity shareholders. And that's why equity earnings divided by the equity capital. So 1101.62 divided by 4464. 1101.62 divided by 4464.82. Okay. So what will happen? Let me share here. We were discussing about the accounting returns. Okay. So here, if you look at the number, the number is 1. Can you see the numbers that I'm writing here? 1101.62 divided by 4464.82. Okay. And this will give us, what is the answer? What is the answer you are getting? For the return on equity, ROE, to the equity shareholders. Yes, I see some responses here in the chat box. Okay. 24.67%. Right? Garima? Zil? Yes. Mayank? Very true. 24.67% is the ROE, return on equity capital. So I've taken one ratio from each category. Let me move on to the third category, the efficiency ratios. The efficiency ratios, so the efficiency ratios basically talks about the amount of revenues generated for every rupee of the investment made by the company. Okay. And over here, in the first case, in the previous case, that is in the case of accounting returns, we looked at the return generated per rupee of capital. Whereas over here, we are looking at the revenue generated per rupee of the investment. So that's why it says that, you know, how efficient the company's resources are in terms of generating the revenue. And higher the revenue generated, higher the efficiency. Lower the revenue generated, lower the efficiency. And two most important ratios here in case of efficiency, one is with reference to the short-term capital, that is the working capital. And the another way which we normally look at is the long-term capital. And that's how we pay equal attention to short-term as well as long-term. So in case of working capital turnover, sales by net non-cash working capital. Now here, please make sure that we take non-cash working capital, because cash is not considered as the investment made in the business. And that's why it is not supposed to generate returns. Rather, these are the idle amount lying with the company to ensure the liquidity for the company, but it does not generate any revenue or any kind of return. So always when we take the working capital in such kind of ratios, we take excluding cash, the working capital. That is primarily inventories and receivables. And the asset turnover, it talks about sales vis-a-vis total assets. So how efficiently my assets are invested in the business. Okay. And obviously, higher the efficiency ratio or higher the number, higher the efficiency of the business. And that obviously tells us that how quickly a company can grow, because the resources are more efficiently being utilized. But at the same time, we should also ensure that it's not excessive utilization of the resources, that it ultimately reduces the life of the asset. Okay. And that's why we need to compare such ratios with the industry average. Okay. So normally these ratios are again presented these ratios are presented in terms of number of times. So 2 times, 5 times, whatever the number of times that the working capital turnover and the asset turnover. Now look at this formula, sales by total assets. Let's look at now for the Pidilite industry, what happens, that what is the sales and what is the total assets of the Pidilite Industries. Let me share the balance sheet again with you and the P&L statement. Now see, look at this ratio. The efficiency ratio is a combination of the which takes into consideration the P&L statement as well as the balance sheet. Okay. So look at the sales. You had the sales figure earlier with you. 6332. Okay. Let me write the numbers. 6332.59. And the total asset base, okay, for Pidilite Industries is 5819. Okay. 5819.06. This is the number that we have taken for 2020. Okay. And let me move on. So here, let me write the numbers. $6,332.59 divided by 5819.06. Okay. How many times do you get? If you can write in the chat box. $1.09 or 1.088, whatever that you round it off to. So the asset turnover ratio for Pidilite Industries is 1.09. Not so impressive. Okay, that means they can still utilize the resources in a better way by earning more revenue or more sales. Then the higher the ratio, the better it is. And obviously, this is also compared with the industry average. Okay. So the next category of the ratios is the financial leverage. Now, this is very important ratio for the company, primarily because it lets us know that what is the proportion of the ownership capital what is the proportion of the debt capital vis-a-vis the ownership capital, or what is the proportion of debt vis-a-vis EBITDA. EBITDA is very important because, as I mentioned earlier, it talks about the cash profit. So whether I have enough cash, sufficient cash to pay off to my debt or not. And that's why debt to EBITDA ratio is calculated. So basically financial leverage ratios represents or shows as the financial strength of the company and how much the company has borrowed relative to the equity capital or relative to the EBITDA. And these are the two most commonly used ratios. But they include always ensure that these are the two important things that you must keep in mind. One, include only long-term debt, never include short-term debt. Okay. And that long-term debt must be interest-bearing debt. That's one. And the second, include commitment like lease. Normally, we do not consider lease as the debt, but is an obligation on the part of the company. And that's why when you are calculating debt equity ratio or debt to EBITDA ratio, always consider lease as part of a debt. Many of us tend to forget about lease because it's not been presented in the balance sheet as the obligation, right? And one important thing that comes up over here, shall we take the book value of debt or market value of debt? Shall we take book value of equity or shall we take market value of equity? Now, both the approaches have their own pluses and minuses, but always ensure that if you're taking book value, then you be consistent with the book value. If you're taking the market value, be consistent with the market value. Okay, don't mix up both of this. And always the financial ratios are presented in terms of number of times. Okay. So let's look at the debt equity ratio of okay, I see a question here. Just a minute. Zeal says that interest and taxes can affect cash flow. So how EBITDA becomes a cash profit? Okay. Cash profit is from all capital suppliers point of view I'm talking about. So when we talk about all capital suppliers, it includes the debt suppliers as well as the equity suppliers. And what do we pay to the debt suppliers is the interest. And what we pay to the equity suppliers is a dividend. So when we are talking from all capital suppliers point of view, we should ignore the cost that is incurred in terms of making payments to these capital suppliers. Okay. And that is the reason why we ignore both of them. Because if I say that I'll be paying you 10 rupees of interest, and if I earn 100 rupees, from that first I deduct 10 rupees interest, and then what remains is 90 rupees. And now I compare it with my 10 rupees interest or 10% interest that is to be paid, it will turn out to be dual consideration of interest. Once I've already deducted the interest, and again I'm comparing the net return with my cost of capital. So that will lead to dual consideration of interest. And that's why technically in financial terminologies, whenever we are calculating such ratios, we do not consider interest as well as the dividend. So both the capital suppliers we have kept aside. That's what is known as in financial terminologies as separation principle, keeping the financing side and cost side separate. Okay. Okay, Harshal is asking that why non-cash working capital and why we are not considering cash. Harshal, definitely cash has opportunity cost associated with it, but cash does not generate any revenue for the business. Cash is basically to facilitate the day-to-day transactions, right? And ideally, when we are comparing the liquidity vis-a-vis profitability, higher the cash that we retain in the business, that means we are ensuring higher liquidity, but it comes at a cost of loss of profitability because the cash does not generate any profit for the business. And that's why most businesses try to retain lower cash as possible because it's not the earning asset for the business. I hope that is clear, Harshit. Divya, it's already 10 o'clock. Shall I end this session or what shall I do? Okay, Varsha is asking that why don't we consider other income here? Because other income is not coming from the operations. And when we are looking at the efficiency, we look at only the efficiency in terms of the core business efficiency. That's why for the efficiency ratio, we take only sales. I have not written revenue as a numerator. I have written sales as a numerator. Right? Yes, sorry, Divya, I missed that. Yeah, okay. So I have only 2 more slides to cover up. So I quickly wind up the third category. So I've talked about financial leverage ratios and the last category, the liquidity ratios. As I just talked about why liquidity is important for a business. And here, normally we look at these 2 important ratios. There are many, but we look at 2 important ratios. One is the current ratio and the other is a quick ratio. And while current ratio takes into consideration current assets to current liabilities, some are of the argument that inventories are not so liquid. And secondly, the business cannot consider, cannot sell inventory as and when required. And that's why we have an alternative measure available as a quick ratio. So in case of quick ratio, we take the numerator as current assets minus inventories and denominator remains same. And primarily the liquidity ratio gives us the idea that, how much liquid resources that the company has to cover the near-term needs or near-term expenses. So to cover up what is immediately required, how much cash or liquid resources that the company has. And liquidity is important for businesses, primarily to ensure that the liabilities are paid off as and when the need arises. Okay. Again, this has also been presented as in terms of number of times. Okay. And these two ratios are the important ratios. So from these ratios that we have discussed over here in 5 different categories, how to sum up or what do we conclude from this? Whenever you are doing the ratio analysis, ensure that you don't clutter with too many ratios. Please be very clear what is relevant to your business and to your objectives of the analysis. From whose perspective are you calculating? If you are calculating from the debt supplier's perspective, definitely you cannot ignore debt equity ratio. Okay, so please be very clear what is relevant to your objective and what is relevant to your business. Why business? Because for a bank, maybe debt equity ratio doesn't matter or is not so important, because the primary source of fund for a bank is the deposits, they are the borrowed funds. So we never calculate debt equity ratio for a bank. Okay. Always ensure that ratios are just the tools. The numbers do not tell us anything. We need to learn how to read those numbers. Okay. And how to make judgment, how to use your own judgment about these numbers. So mathematically, anyone can calculate. If you are given the numbers, even a 5th standard student can do the addition, multiplication, subtraction. So what is important is that how to read those numbers and how to make judgments. And always ensure that we are using the ratios to connect the past with the future. Okay, we cannot undo, we cannot change the past, but these numbers give us a direction about what is possible in the near future. Right? So that's all I wanted to share. These are few of the important readings. I'll be sharing the PPT if you want. And maybe you can go through this, some additional information here. A couple of readings that I have mentioned here from the Corporate Finance Institute website and the Harvard Business School website. Okay. Any other question anyone has? Okay. So Divya, shall I end?
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really a nice session. I would like to invite Anu Jain to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable time to enhance our knowledge. Today's session was really a great session, and it will be helpful for us throughout our life, through our professional career. And special thanks to Fenil sir, Anjali ma'am, Harit sir for arranging such sessions. And at last, I would like to say thank you to all the coordinators and audience for your attention here. Really, thank you to all once again. Over to you, Divya.
Hope the participants had learned something out of this session. Okay. Shall I end, Divya?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Most welcome.